This is a so-called vertical forest. Many believe that this is the future of sustainable architecture. But what if I told you that this ancient church, and not the vertical forest, has been secretly showing true sustainability for multiple centuries? The Bosco Verticale in Milan is one of the most celebrated green buildings of the world. Covered in 20,000 plants and 800 trees, it's been copied in cities from China to the Netherlands, winning awards and appearing on every architectural magazine cover. But here's the thing, this beautiful church in Rome might actually be far more sustainable than any vertical forest ever built. And the reason why will completely change how you think about what makes architecture truly green. So let's discover what is true sustainability, what are just greenwashing gimmicks, and why there's more to this story than you think. Over the past decades, we've seen an explosion of so-called sustainable architecture. Towers covered in trees, buildings with integrated wind turbines, facades plastered with solar panels. They look impressive in renderings and they certainly photograph well. But there's a problem. Many of these buildings don't actually deliver on their green promises. Take the Strata SE1 in London for example, a 147-meter residential tower topped with 3 massive wind turbines that have barely moved since the building opened in 2010. It won the Carbuncle Cup for the worst building of the year in the UK, described as services to greenwash. Or the Bahrain World Trade Center, which was built with its wind funnel aimed at increasing airflow facing the wrong direction, designed on intuition rather than proper wind flow analysis. But the problems with green architecture go much deeper than turbines that don't spin. Because what almost nobody talks about is the massive carbon footprint these buildings create just to exist in the first place. This is called embodied carbon, the CO2 emissions from producing materials like concrete, steel and glass, and from the construction process itself. And for buildings like vertical forests, these numbers are staggering. Let me show you what I mean. The Bosco Verticale in Milan has 2 towers with a combined floor area of 40,000 square meters. To support all those trees and the earth they grow in, which add enormous weight, the floor slabs had to be made much thicker than normal. A typical post-tensioned concrete floor slab for an 8-meter span should be about 20 centimeters thick. But the Bosco Verticale's floor slabs are 28 centimeters. That's 8 centimeters of extra concrete, just to carry the trees on every floor. To produce all that extra concrete, on top of the concrete that would be used anyway, a lot of additional CO2 is produced. These extra construction emissions are not quickly offset by tree sequestration alone. And we're not even counting the extra steel reinforcement that is needed. Also, there are additional costs to such a tower. The specialized soil systems, the irrigation or the maintenance. Speaking of maintenance, each resident has to pay a whopping 1,500 euros per month for the gardeners to maintain the 20,000 bushes and 800 trees. That's just an astounding number. But the problems don't end here, because these towers, like any buildings, have a certain role in the city. They don't exist in a vacuum, but amongst other buildings. And if you visit the towers, you'll see how these buildings completely ignore their surroundings. Black mirrored glass and fences make the building look like a hostile fortress. Instead of being friendly and inviting, you're met by blank glass walls that kill any interaction. Essentially, it turns its back to the city. The same is true for its cousin in the Netherlands, the Trudeau Tower. It sits on an alienating black metal box, with a strip of glass underneath. It's not exactly welcoming or warm. And the Bosco Verticale is actually one of the success stories. In Chengdu, China, the KITT city forest garden became a nightmare. With hardly any residents to care for the plants, the vegetation overran the towers. Even worse, the buildings became infested with mosquitoes, making them nearly uninhabitable. But the green building hype isn't just about vertical forests. Even buildings with prestigious green certifications often fail to deliver. A study found that LEED certified commercial buildings, on average, show no significant primary energy savings over comparable non-LEED buildings. There's more certificates, like BREEAM. As one researcher put it, BREEAM can be helpful, but it is fundamentally flawed because it fails to take into account the whole picture. Plus, it isn't flexible enough. So, if modern green architecture isn't actually that green, then what is? The answer might be found in buildings that are hundreds, even thousands of years old. I'm standing in an ancient church in Rome, and if you look closely at the tops of these columns, you'll notice something fascinating. The capitals, or the decorative tops, are all different. That's because they're reused from ancient Roman buildings. In former times, demolished buildings didn't end up in landfills. They became quarries. Materials were carefully salvaged and reused, sometimes for centuries. So the already low carbon cost of these materials was spread out over generations. And the materials themselves barely had any carbon emissions. Stone, shaped by hand, is produced by Earth itself. Bricks were fired once and were used in buildings that still stand after hundreds of years, and were often reused. Timber stores carbon rather than emitting it, something we start to do again today with cross-laminated timber. But it's not only reuse of materials that makes buildings last longer, it's also their adaptability. The Pantheon in Rome is fully intact after 2000 years as it found a new purpose. But this wasn't only due to adaptability, it was also because it was beautiful. After all, we take better care for what we find beautiful. For example, compare this British phone box with this one. The first one is already in very bad shape and will not stand the test of time. It will be removed and forgotten. This famous red phone box, however, has lost its original function but is still used. That is because it is beautiful, it has character, and therefore people are willing to keep it. This mechanism works in buildings too. In other words, the more beautiful a building is, the more sustainable it will be. Even though we care more for beautiful things, one of the most beautiful things we have is still deteriorating, and that is nature. Everybody loves our forests, oceans and natural landscapes, and yet everywhere these ecosystems are under pressure. To make matters worse, many environmental organizations operate the same way as the vertical forests we discussed. They bombastically promise impact, but the actual results are disappointing. Planet Wild is different. Think of it as crowdfunding for nature, but with full transparency. Every month, their community of over 18,000 members funds a new conservation mission, like protecting our oceans, bringing back endangered species, or rewilding forests. And they document everything in monthly videos you can watch right here on YouTube. So within 30 days of joining, you actually see where your contribution goes. Last month, for example, they helped fight the ocean plastic problem in Mumbai. Nature is incredibly important. Without thriving ecosystems like oceans and forests all around the world, we can't sustain life on our planet, including in our cities. The mission of Planet Wild and its transparency is what convinced me to become a member. I wanted to support something where I could verify the results myself. If you want to join a growing community that makes a difference, consider joining Planet Wild. You can give whatever amount feels right. Every dollar counts in protecting our planet. Here's a special gift for you. The first 100 people to sign up using my code Aesthetic1 will get their first month paid for by me. Just scan this QR code or click the link in the description. And the best part? You'll immediately have an impact in nature and see the results in less than 30 days here on YouTube. And there's no catch here, you can cancel anytime. Now let me show you the real difference between traditional architecture and modern green buildings. Modern buildings rely heavily on concrete, steel and glass. Concrete production alone accounts for 8% of global CO2 emissions. Steel production is incredibly energy intensive, and those massive glass curtain walls, they lead to incredibly energy inefficient buildings, requiring constant heating and cooling. Traditional building materials require minimal processing, however, and are often sourced locally, reducing the energy needed to transport it. But here's the crucial difference. Modern buildings are designed to last 30 to 50 years. They're essentially disposable, while traditional buildings were designed to last forever. Many are still standing after 500 years, and are still beautiful, still functional and still loved. When you spread the embodied carbon of a building over 500 years instead of 50, the equation changes completely. And this is the key aspect of sustainability that is overlooked today. Here I want to make a little side note too, because so far we've focused on carbon alone. But sustainability is about much more than just CO2. What about plastic paints that lead to enormous amounts of microplastic particles, washing off buildings when it rains and ending up in the oceans? Or UPVC window frames that are almost impossible to reuse and are highly toxic? Or the endless stream of plastic insulation materials that are not reusable and end up in our landfills, poisoning our planet? Where is the outrage over that kind of pollution? Anyone who ignores those factors and proposes high-tech but polluting materials to save some carbon is, in my eyes, just making it all worse. The most sustainable buildings are those made from simple, organic materials crafted in beautiful shapes that people want to retain over years. Now let's look at the economic dimension, because building sustainable, beautiful places doesn't have to be expensive. Ettore Mazzola, professor at the Rome campus of Notre Dame School of Architecture, analyzed early 20th century social housing in Italy that was built using traditional methods. The cost? Between 415 and 629 euros per square meter in today's money. That's comparable to, or even cheaper than, many modern social housing projects. These beautiful but humble buildings are now sold as luxury housing. So in fact, we could compare their construction costs with those of luxury housing, making the difference even starker. While many modernist social housing blocks from the 1960s and 70s have already been demolished, and many more will be in the near future. But creating sustainable environments isn't just about buildings, carbon or saving the planet. It's about creating places that people want to preserve. We've demolished countless modernist buildings and even whole housing estates after just 30 or 40 years. Not because they were structurally unsound, but because nobody wanted to save them. They were unloved, alienating and sometimes even depressing. But traditional neighborhoods are so loved that people fight to preserve them. They're protected as heritage sites. They attract tourists and residents alike. They create community cohesion and a sense of belonging. And they do this while being inherently sustainable, walkable, human-scaled, mixed-use, and with local craftsmanship supporting local economies. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but we need innovation. We can't just go back to building like we did 200 years ago. And you're right, we shouldn't. But traditional architecture doesn't mean rejecting modern technology. It means using time-tested building forms and materials combined with modern building systems where they make sense. You can have a traditionally designed building with modern installation standards, efficient heating systems and renewable energy without the greenwashing. It's about using traditional principles, not necessarily copying a style. Places like Pambury in England, Le Plessis-Robinson in France and Cayala in Guatemala prove this is possible. They're new, they're beautiful and timeless in design. And they're just as sustainable as most modernist developments. But there's a deeper problem here. The modernist, innovation-driven ideology that gave us vertical forests and wind turbines that don't turn is the same ideology that gave us car-dependent suburbs and soulless housing estates. Le Corbusier himself said, "We will have our cars. We must use them until they are worn out, grinding down roads, surfaces and gears, burning up oil and gasoline. Everything that is needed for a huge amount of work. Enough for everyone." This consumerist approach to architecture, build it cheap, write it off in 50 years, demolish and build again, is fundamentally unsustainable. Traditional architecture represents the opposite philosophy. Build it to last, build it beautifully, and build it to be inherited by future generations. As Ettore Mazzola brilliantly put it, we don't need more visionaries to solve non-existent problems. We need to solve existing problems with solutions that have already been proven to work. We need inheritable cities, places that last for centuries, not decades. We need to revive traditional building techniques and craftsmanship that create buildings with lower embodied carbon and longer lifespans. And we need to stop falling for greenwashing that looks good in renderings but fails to deliver real sustainability. So yes, this ancient church, built with reused materials, designed to last forever, creating a sense of place that people cherish, is much, much greener than any vertical forest. Not because it has more plants, but because true sustainability isn't about adding trees to towers. It is actually about building things that don't need to be replaced. It's about creating places so beautiful, so functional, so loved, that future generations will fight to preserve them rather than tear them down. And the good news? We can still build like this. We just need to choose to. If this video changed how you think about sustainable architecture, share it with someone who needs to see it. If you also believe that cities should be more beautiful and crave the tools to help achieve this, then join hundreds of other students who have already transformed their understanding of the built environment in our very own academy. The January cohort is now open, so join today before the deadline closes. Don't forget to check out Planet Wild. You'll immediately have an impact in nature and see the result in less than 30 days right here on YouTube. If you want to see them in action, check their mission Fighting Ocean Plastic here. Thank you for watching and see you next time.